Danny Wolf, I'm gonna start you out with an easy one. Okay. How can we solve the mass existential crisis and disillusionment that comes with being a B2B marketer today?
You said start with an easy one.
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh shit. Well, you should have said this ahead of time. I gotta think about this. I mean, there are gonna be a lot of awkward silences then.
Yeah, how do we solve the mass existential crisis or marketers becoming disillusioned, being in B2B today, given all the crap everyone's dealing with?
How do you come so I'm gonna counter the question. How do you come across that observation that this is the current crisis?
Anecdotally, based on the conversations that I've had, marketers being measured on things that don't really make sense, things that they can't really affect in a meaningful way, like closed one revenue, for example,
Mhm.
being on teams where half your team is cut, the work doesn't go away, sometimes it increases, and then getting burned out, trying to hit those metrics and those goals that don't really make sense to be measured on in the first place. Then you combine that with having to do it with less resources and just being at a point where it doesn't really make sense anymore. And of course, that is all
Yeah.
anecdotal and just based on people I've reached out to and a lot of people that have reached out to me as well.
There's no easy answer to all of that, is there?
Mm.
I mean, if anything, I think the first step would be deep, deep, deep introspection amongst those team members. And
What
that's
does
not
that look
easy to
like?
do. That's not easy to do, because then it has to by the way, I don't know if this is the right answer, this is just what's coming through my head. This is
Yeah,
therapy, right?
yeah,
Okay. That's not easy to do because that requires people to actually recognize that there's a lot of flaw happening. Like, what you're doing isn't maybe necessarily the right thing to do. Nobody likes to recognize that they're flawed, right? Nobody likes to go to therapy. But in my experience working in the security space, it's like, more so than in other industries, we can't continue on the status quo. We can't continue doing what you've been, you just listed out for the folks that are listening in, and for me, it requires us to have that introspection and to really take a deep look at whether or not this is the right direction or not. And like, you might be doing that surface level, having the discussions on optimization, taking a look at the numbers, but then maybe still continuing on the same trajectory and the same route, which isn't really going to move the needle long term for scalability and predictability. I don't know, maybe not. But I think the first step, if anything, is just have a deep look like, hey, what are our customers saying? Do we have the data to see what customers are saying? If not, let's start capturing it, because that deep introspection isn't just internal. It's also like on the periphery of it all. What's coming back to us? And if you're not capturing that, then you're going to be stuck in that spot for a long time and like, running in circles trying to bite your tail. Does that make sense?
yeah. It does. I think it's easier said than done. Yeah,
Yes.
obviously, but I will bring up one thing that I know that you have discussed before: um, circumventing obstacles in terms of trying to get information that you need to better your efforts, your results with whatever you personally are working on. And I believe in this case, I saw you nod. You know what I'm talking about. In this case, research. Can you tell me about that?
I could go on for days about this. What do you want to know? Be more specific. Tell me what you want to know specifically, and I'll try and distill it as best I can.
What went into the decision to circumvent, and when did you know that you were going to have to make that decision whether or not to do it?
Oh, when I knew that I needed to make the decision to do that was when I wasn't performing the way I wanted to perform. And I was sick and tired of not being promoted because I didn't have the numbers behind me, even though I knew I was fucking good at what I did. By the way, can we curse on this
Of course.
therapy session?
Yeah.
Um, and also when I just got the brutally honest feedback that, like, who the hell are you to say what you just said? And that was from a customer. I'm like, oh, okay, those two paired together, I do not want to feel that way anymore. And so take it an extra step when you're also not getting invited to the table to listen in on analyst briefings, when you
Mm,
don't have the data to really understand people behaviorally, like the psychographic data which you need to capture as a marketer, when you don't understand motivation, because it's not in Salesforce, and sales doesn't want to talk to you. They have their own agenda, right? And customer success doesn't give you the time of day, and the customer success doesn't give you access to customers to talk to. That's when I realized that introspection is on me. So taking back to the first question is like, yeah, we need to understand things internally as a team, but you need to understand things about yourself and what you're doing wrong and how to alleviate that or mitigate it. You're accountable for that. And so that to me was the change moment. Going through all those painful experiences. Um and it was scary to do because I didn't have approval per se. I didn't have budget, and God knows when you work in a startup, you don't have time.
yeah.
So you just gotta, bust through it and do it and kind of again take a deep look at what you're doing also tactically. Like, am I spending my time on the right things that are moving the needle? Yes, no, kill it, then put in the circumventing and the research in instead and that's the experiment. See where it takes you.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I was going to ask you about is what did that look like in terms of tactics? Was it just like direct outreach or getting files
Yes.
or, just reaching out just, "Hey, I'm from we need to chat."
It started out with, so I could chunk it in phases. The realization that there's a big problem, the realization that I'm spending time on things that are super trivial and not moving the needle, and then the realization that I need to access data. Next step, access data from what I see might be internal, whether it's recorded calls, Salesforce notes, spending time with internal stakeholders who are customer facing, like sales, customer success, even the CMO. Understanding also, by the way, what are their goals so that when you go to look at data, how can you take that data and pair it to their objectives? But then I realized, okay, well, that's not enough. And so the next step was we have to talk to customers. And if I can't talk to the actual customer because God forbid you talk to an opportunity, and you fumble a deal, or that's the perception, which is false in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, if you're good at what you do and you know how to navigate a conversation, which comes with practice, you shouldn't be fumbling a deal, and you state what your intentions are. Um, so the next best thing is the buyer. Like, who is my ideal customer? Do I know that? Is it the person, the last person that bought us, or is it a group of people? So that's where you kind of get good at understanding what ideal customer is too. The people who
Yeah.
are best fit to buy from you based off of revenue data. And then find those people and outreach and say, "Hey, this is my intention. This is what I want from you. This is what I'm going to get. If no, just say no. I don't, we can move on. Have a good day." That's it. Not looking to sell anything, just looking to get feedback. Do you want to help me? And I've been really successful in capturing those conversations because of stating those exact things on the outreach through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. And it's not through
Yeah.
LinkedIn Sales Navigators, through like direct connection. Hey, like, this is who I want to connect with. This is what, taking a look and listening what they're talking about online, engaging with them, and then coming in for the ask. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more. Are you interested? Here's why. Here are the intentions. Here's how long it's going to take. If you're not interested, just say no.
How many no's did you get?
3.
out of
100 plus.
I'd say that that motion went pretty well. Then, like
Yeah.
when you're on that journey, is it I'm just going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission? Are you trying to fly under the radar? Are you considering the ramifications if like if you're confident in your conversational abilities and you know that there's you don't want a deal dropped or something like that, but how are you preparing yourself if somebody has a problem with it?
Here's what our customer said. It wasn't me. Here's evidence. Why? So in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, they're going to slam some, my boss might slam me because I'm spending time doing this. Nope. Why in the holy hell would anybody yell at you for getting to know your customer base? If they are, think very carefully and think hard about the people you're working for. If anything, that's going to get you a seat at the table.
Yeah, I don't know if there's another human on the planet that could have put it any better than that right there. That's one of those things that once you start looking at it from a different perspective and going, what are the motivations? What are the intentions of the people that are making these kinds of decisions that are, well, it at its base, like just preventing you from being more effective at what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And of course, a lot of the times we'll never get those answers. We're always going to wonder it. But is that once you start to see those type of things, is that when you start reevaluating and can you kind of see the writing on the wall and just this is not sustainable for me personally? Like
100%.
being in that situation that you were in as you're doing that research and just trying to get better at your job, what's going through your mind? Are you looking for the door?
No, not maybe subconsciously. If anything, I'm looking at myself and maybe kicking myself in the ass a little bit and thinking like, what the hell have I been doing for the last decade? Why didn't I start doing this much sooner? Because I kept saying, you got to know your audience, you got to talk to your audience, you got to know who you're marketing to, you got to understand them. Yeah, okay. Everybody says it. Yet nobody's doing it, and nobody's showing you how to practically do it, and nobody's like very few are. Let's just say not nobody, very few are mastering that.
It would appear that you found out, in addition to all those things you just stated, that there are actually people that would prefer that you not.
I don't know if it's again, it's an assumption. So that I've never been explicitly told no, 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 but it's been like, well, what about this? And we have to do this. But then I come to the table and I say, but that's not effective. That's when people don't like to hear. That's what people don't like to hear. Like when you push back and say, well, why are we doing this? The evidence says otherwise. That's when there a little bit of friction occurs. But then as a researcher and as a marketer, you have to come to the table and you have to say, well, this is my domain. I do XYZ, I do digital or demand or events or whatever your role is. I have the evidence that says this. We're going to do this program. These are the results we're going to get. Even if you don't have, a lot of data behind you, but you have evidence.
Sure.
As a marketer, we're all experimenters. Experiment and have a plan behind it. Have a hypothesis, you have the evidence, run the experiment, come back to the table, create the program holistically. And so I don't think I ran for the door, but I was definitely like questioning myself and my tactics. And that's where like my eyes were really wide open. I'm like, holy hell, what I did, really, what did I do for the last 10 years? What needs to change? How am I gonna change the whole, like everything that I learned in different verticals in the last 10 years or 12 years or 13 years or however long. I don't even know how long I'm in tech.
Gotcha.
Um,
So I hear you say, "What the hell was I doing?
mhm.
Why am I doing this? Why was I not doing this?" is it that you specifically were like I know you fairly well, like you take supreme ownership, and I love that. It's awesome. It's extremely admirable. But is there a chance that in that situation that you were going through that maybe that's just what everyone thought that role was at that point,
Yes,
and you just had a
100%.
completely different idea of it?
Yes,
Can you tell me about
100%.
that?
I'm trying to like I'm thinking I'm trying to think like about the role that I've been in, and it differed in different organizations because I worked with different people.
Sure.
I worked with different personalities. I worked with different circumstances. You know, whether or not a superior had left and a new one came in, and
Mm.
it's so unique. So, I mean, I could kind of maybe break it down, but it's just maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I can answer it. Between us, want to tread very lightly with what I say.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Well, the reason I ask is because I've been trying to go to a place in my allow myself to go to a place in my head where I consider the different roles on a
yes,
marketing team,
yes,
specifically in B2B, and just look at them from 10,000-foot view, and then zoom in as much as I possibly can. And I go, if I were a marketer, would I have created this role? Would I assign these specific things to a human that has that title? Does that make sense that that individual is responsible for these specific things? And then I start to think about things like, is all this just made up and nobody's really anything? We're all just marketers. We're all creative, analytical, human relationship focused people that just want to form authentic connections. That's it. Those are the requirements.
no, not everybody's like that. Sadly,
Mm.
not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody feels like that. Not everybody has a mission like that. Some just come to work, do things, and go home. That's I'm I'm gonna get paid for it.
And
Some
that's totally fair. Yeah, I get that.
some w- are that, and some have a hard time doing that for one reason or another. It could be neurodiversity. It could be uh, comfort level, not connected to neurodiversity, just comfort level. What's in my kind of like wheelhouse when it comes to communication, um, specific domain experience in marketing. It's so like there's so many different nuances. It's hard. I don't know if I can. Let's kind of go back to your original kind of question regarding this. What's the intent of the question so I can kind of better align my answer?
Yeah, gotcha. So are basically what is the mindset of marketers as a whole? Like people that like know this is what I do. Like not the folks that like you mentioned just this is my job. I just do my thing. You know, I'm here for the paycheck. What however you want to classify that. But like the people
Yeah.
that are really invested in marketing as a craft, we'll call it that. What is that? What does that mindset look like? And if that is the same with a whole group of marketers within different like roles, does that just mean that people with that particular type of brain can just do any type of marketing? You know, that's kind of where I went. Like, the, 99% of the job descriptions on LinkedIn for different types of marketers, life cycle, attention, content, like it's all the same. And so I get, that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, by trade, I think anybody could learn anything if they're willing to in marketing, so they can actually do it all. Um, I think it's what people are passionate about, what people like doing. That's where they fit within the mold of different marketing functions. But in security, I think specifically, the unique thing about security, marketers in security, is that there's this, not everybody, again, I don't want to bucket everybody in here, but there's a
Sure.
larger percentage of people who are super passionate and relentless to, affect change, protect the world, really roll up sleeves, who are like, who have grit more so than in other verticals that I've seen.
Perfect word. Yeah.
Um, so if there's anything, like, because of that grit, they're willing to do what needs to be done to get the job done, to persuade audiences, to help people, to educate people, to connect them to the right people, to, um, whatever it is, right? Um, there's a willingness to kind of go beyond what is the traditional or the norm of their own role to get the job done. That's what I've observed in this space. Not, again, not everybody, more so though in this vertical than in others that I've worked in.
Sure.
And I think that's because of the nature of this industry, like the mission of this industry. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is.
Kind
It
of.
is a beast of its own, and it's a really good call out because um, you have certain industries that certain types of brains gravitate towards. I think security is certainly one of them for a couple different
Mm.
reasons. I think you hit the main one. Like, how many marketing professionals do you hear when they're talking about like the industry that they work in use the word mission? I've never heard of any. It's like or it might be maybe healthcare or something like that. But I would guess that it's pretty rare, to find that level of commitment to either a greater good or a mission or just or maybe less than that, just everybody being on the same page and like, oh, we know what we're supposed to do here, like a sense of purpose.
Yes.
And so here's a question for you. If you're one of those marketers that knows that they have like this is what they want to do, like that's their craft, and they want to affect some sort of meaningful change somewhere, or they want to have a more purpose driven career, but they're running a social media account for a bakery somewhere. Like, what do you say to those people? Like, is there some words of affirmation or a path that they can walk down, or
So I'm gonna split it to two camps: the camp that's already working here in security, and the camp that wants to come into the security space. I actually, you know what? This applies to both camps. Think very hard about your true intention for working in the security space, because it is a challenging industry to navigate. It's very saturated. We all know that. It's like kind of the
sure,
uh,
it's just a running joke at this point.
statement of the decade.
Yeah.
Um, but beyond that, it's like it's fast evolving. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's scary at times because this is like we're dealing against like real threat.
Yeah.
And those factors together require you to be, again, sharp, relentlessly curious, so connected to your buyer more than other industries because of, again, because of all the factors: fast paced, changing, people change, threats are popping up and down, motivations and behaviors of adversaries are changing, they're becoming more sophisticated. Like,
Yeah.
think very hard about your intention for coming into the space or staying in the space. Like if you can't handle it, if you can't have that grit
Good
and roll
point.
up your sleeves, you either go or you don't come in. That's the number one piece of advice I would give to anybody working as a marketer in the space. And because of all that, it is so critical for marketers to be so obsessed with the customers that they're trying to persuade, because you can't persuade these people without understanding them deeply. Do CRO, do all that, like, oh, make the website better, but why? Do I need to? Is it enough? Am I touching on the right things? Am I setting up the right conversion rate experiments? That's not where you start. When you come into this industry, or if you're in this industry, take a good look if you understand who you're trying to market and sell to. If you don't understand, go back to the foundation, start all over again. It's not too late.
What would you say to the marketers that would answer that homework assignment by just writing an ICP?
Where did you get the data from to write the ICP? One. How do you like where did you get the data to write the ICP and all the parameters that you need for defining an ideal customer profile? Do you have the data? And I'm not talking about firmographic and demographic data. I'm talking about the qualitative, the behavioral data, the motivation, the need, the pain. Do you have all that? Like
Well,
really,
we
really have the true stuff. Do you have the evidence? Or
well, we
is
got a
it
list
is
of
it
CISOs from ZoomInfo,
okay, and where's the evidence? Who said it?
right? Yeah, it's going beyond like firmographic and all that stuff, and learning like titles and roles of buying committees and whatnot. Like, what? How deep are you talking? Because I think that's what anybody listening would really benefit from is when you say like go that extra mile and then go some more. What does that look like in this world?
Clark, you saw my list of data points. You saw the list that we need to pull. Um, you have look, you can go deep. You can have the profiles already preset, but like I said, like get the evidence yourself. Look at the words, the verbatim words they're saying. Um, Look at sentiment. Look at again, like the buyer's journey is behavior in essence. And I like how people say it's so complex and it's here and there and it's like this and that. But it could be simpler than all this that they're saying on, the ABM stuff or the charts they're putting up.
Everybody's seen those graphics with like
Yeah, like it's not
squiggly lines
linear, it's
everywhere, and
squiggly. Fine, okay, but where, what, how? Like give context to that. Get the true definition that pairs with those buckets. It's not enough to just say that. Where is it? Where like some people don't do the work to find the evidence behind it. Am I making sense? Like I
yep.
don't know how to articulate it. It's like you got to see
Well,
for
they're
yourself.
speaking in absolutes
Yes.
when they're unaware of the fact that it's a very nuanced conversation.
Yes. Yes.
And we see that a lot on LinkedIn in the echo
Mhm.
chamber. There's a lot of absolutes, a lot of this is dead, don't do this anymore. And I was talking with someone the other day about like if I'm a VP or a CMO, like that terrifies me that my team is just on LinkedIn getting marketing advice from people not in their industry, that it could just be wrong. Like just because someone's got 30,000 followers doesn't mean they're good at their job. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. It's crazy that all like I get the ease of distribution and content creation. Like sure, I get it. I spun up this podcast in like a day. Like here we are, and we can just say whatever we want. But when your team is going out and just getting fed a fire hose full of marketing adjacent nonsense and then putting that into action, like you're in
Yes.
for a world of hurt.
In my journey of um, doing research on buyers and people, I realized that in my questioning, I've had to steer away from the set questioning because research has so many different people who do research, their objectives are different. And when your objectives are different, the line of questioning is different. And when you develop these ICPs, yeah, you have set kind of parameters of what to look at. But when you work on a team as a marketer, right, that has to, do content, has to spin up ads, events, website, product, and product marketing. Like, again, not everybody does all this, but when you have broad
Sure.
roles, the objectives are different. And so when I say go deep, each marketer is responsible for their own research because your objective is different. Product marketing doesn't understand content marketing or event marketing or digital objectives better than the actual accountable person running that function. They're not going to go find the insight for you. So you're going to have to run based off of assumption, not backed by evidence. That's fine. You could run on assumption and hypotheses. You need evidence. So the problem with those ICPs is sometimes they're not tied to the objective of the person who needs to read that and understand the ICP.
Cool.
I'm a
Yeah.
content marketer now. I've never been a director of content. It's weird. Very, very weird. I've been
I was going to
demand
touch
and
on
digital.
that. Like, can we all say that? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you do? What are you doing?
I'm still running a business. But my job is to educate a broad community through content and eventually convert them to business. My role as a content marketer, my responsibility is to understand who I'm trying to persuade before anything. And sometimes those ICP, like I said, those ICP cards don't touch on the questions that I have. What kind of content resonates with them? What channels? What formats? The length? That is nowhere in the ICP card. So when I look at these, again, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, and I don't know if we were like
Love
aligned
it.
with the original questioning. When I look at these recommendations online on LinkedIn, they're all great and valid. Like, here's a list of 100 questions to ask. But that's also trivial. And that's a waste of time
Yep.
for some people. Not for all. Maybe for the small teams that do a lot of different things in marketing. But like for the larger teams, um, I'd say even maybe like Series B up who have 5 to 7 plus marketers who are doing different functions. That's trivial because it doesn't apply to everybody. Like you have to align your questions to what your objective is. And a lot of the times marketers don't know what their objective is when they're talking to their customers. And my assumption, and I haven't validated it yet, my assumption is that people don't do the research because they don't know what they need to know.
Please say that.
I'm not
Please
sure
say
if
that
I'm making
one
sense.
more time. Yes.
So
Yes.
so
Say it again.
in my journey of doing customers, and I've fallen victim to this too. It's like I didn't do the research in the beginning because I didn't know what I needed to know. Because I was so concerned with doing things that weren't moving the needle before taking a step and saying, okay, let's assess, let's figure out what I need to know. What I need to know right now is why in the hell this person is working in security because it's so fucking stressful. Two, why and how do they buy? That's it. That's all I want to know. But then when I started, like when I mastered that, because as a demand gen marketer, you kind of want to know the broad picture, the buyer's journey and stuff.
Yeah.
Still too broad, in my opinion. I think demand gen can go super deep on customer research questions,
Agreed.
but that was good enough. Then I realized when you master the buyer's journey and it's consistent across the board, you can kind of get a little bit more nuanced. You can kind of get a little more specific on things you want to know. And that's when I realized a lot of people don't know what their objective is, that ties to the conversations they need to have with customers. They assume that it's just buyer's journey, decision criteria, success criteria, triggers, whatever. It's not only that, it's so much deeper than that.
That's one of those conversations that like if you're in a situation like that, you're in trouble. Because if like that goes up and that goes down, like you're stuck in the middle of having no ideas and bad ideas. You know, if you don't know what you're supposed to know, in what direction do you even start to walk to figure that out? Because if you don't already have it, then the person that was supposed to give it to you didn't. And
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Well, there's hope. You're in trouble if you don't take a minute to stop and figure that, okay, maybe we need, again, to the, reverting back to the beginning of the conversation, have we really taken a look at what we're doing wrong or right? And I'm not just talking about the metrics, like,
Mhm.
we're not getting enough visibility or traffic or what. No, take a deeper look at the qualitative side of things. Take a deep look internally amongst your team, sit with yourself also, and take a look at what the customers are saying with regards to what your KPIs and metrics are. Are they the right KPIs and metrics also? Then you can figure out, okay, well, what do I need to know in order to flip the script there? And it'll take time to what I need to know. Like you come up with different kinds of objectives and set a quick line of questioning based off of those objectives, based off the decisions that you really need to make. That's when you'll start shifting away from I'm in trouble to there's hope to I figured it out and we're going to make some changes here to this is working because I have the evidence backed by it. And then that's when you're
Where
going to get a seat at the table and level up in your career.
it's only at that point where you're able to approach it from a qualitative state, but you have leveled up so much that you knew to get quantitative proof to be able to go after the qualitative.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
that is such a hard journey as a marketer to get to that point. Like you're playing an RPG, like you're playing a video game, and there you're the main character, and there's no map, there's no objective, no one's telling you what to do. Well, actually, it's worse than that. Everyone's telling you something to do, and you have to go. I've got to glitch my way out of the map somehow.
Oh
I'm on
man.
rails. I've got to go there. How do I get there?
Oh wow, it resonates really hard because I was at I was in that spot where I felt like I was in that kind of video game doom. I envisioned doom, the mazes, and you're going through these doors and you have to kind of like you have to go forward in order not to get eaten, but there's a level up somewhere. There's some cheat code to like get you to just be invisible or like have a force field around you the whole time. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but now that like I've spent a good 3 years doing this every week, it's like I see things differently. It's weird. I just realized, especially now coming in to a role from being out of FTE for a year and a half,
Yeah.
doing really deeply doing the research, like nonstop. Like I did research while I was FTE before I launched Audience First as a company. But now that I come into a role, I see things differently. It's the weirdest thing ever. It's refreshing, but it's really weird. And it's like, whoa. I mean, this just makes sense. Again, I'm going off on a tangent, but like
This is the exact
there's just
tangent
so
I
much.
wanted to go down.
there's just so much more confidence, there's just so much more clarity, there's more predictability, which is gonna be sustainable for Nucleus, which is gonna be sustainable for Audience First. Because the nice thing about also qualitative research is that you don't need massive data sets to see the trends. You don't need 800 survey participants. It's enough to talk to 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 people, and you already nailed it. That's it.
Rather than basically do the equivalent of unresearched cold outreach, sending in mails to people going, hey, can you fill out this Google form? No,
Mhm.
absolutely not.
Well, yeah, but look, there's value in surveys there's value in quantitative
Well,
research too.
sure,
But this format,
right.
especially when you're budget constrained, time constrained, and need need to look at the body language and the words coming out of people's mouths, that like that's just such low barrier there for you.
You know, it's interesting that you
That
mentioned Doom. If we can go
Yeah.
back to that for just a second, because I have a weird question. Of all the video games, Doom, which I'm assuming that you did the motion like you're walking down the hallway, right? So like old school Doom, where it's just
Yeah.
hall after hallway after hallway. So let me ask you this. What is it about having your hands tied behind your back and not being able to do what you know for a fact you're supposed to be doing and what you need to do to succeed at whatever objective you're trying to reach? What about that makes you claustrophobic?
It's hard to know. Well, it's hard to accept and to swallow that you should be doing things a certain way, but because you're not the leader and you can't like and you're dealing with some personalities who want things a certain way, like even when you make the case, you're working with people who want things done a certain way. And it's really disempowering and it sucks. At the end of the day, you're gonna let some people down and you're gonna fail. And it sucks. And it's not good to be in that situation. Now, maybe I didn't do a good job of educating people or educating stakeholders or convincing stakeholders otherwise. Maybe not. So I can't necessarily blame people for needing to do their jobs based off of what they know they do. That's why it's so hard. Like we kind of talked about this in the middle of the conversation about roles and people and experiences. Like it's complex. And so that's why I also say in security, in any industry, really be very selective. Sadly, it's hard to do that because people need to put food on the table. But
Sure.
if you can, be selective about the people you work for and work under.
It's a really good point. You know, I like the point you make about just being selective, and obviously, not everyone's going to be in a situation where they can do that 100% of the time. How do you assess the risk of going to work at an org that you know is not going to work out like you think it is?
Do I have the mental and emotional capacity to take this on and just suck it up? That's how I assess the risk. Can you
Yeah,
accept
fair enough.
the stress?
Fair enough. Another question on internal conversations like that. Like you did kind of double back and go, well, maybe I didn't fully understand the situation as a whole. I didn't have all the exact information, but I made a decision to do it. So when it comes to those type of conversations, is the fact that often we don't understand the nuance it takes to come to a favorable outcome for everybody, is that in some way responsible for the fact that we're still marketing to personas rather than human beings? Are we just putting everybody in a box? so we can put everybody in a funnel, including ourselves?
Let's break that question down so that I understand if I understood correctly, and two, so that I answer meaningfully. Because I perceived it as initially, did I understand what my bosses were going through? That's one. No, I did not. Your second, so the essence of your question, can you repeat that for me, please?
The nuances in the way we make decisions, the way we have conversations internally, the way that people speak on LinkedIn in absolutes, like everything
Mhm.
is either this or this. They don't want me to do this. They do want me to do this. Email marketing's dead. Email marketing's amazing. Those kind of absolutes and the unwillingness to recognize the nuance. Is that what leads us to not pay attention to our audience and to not realize that they're all individual human beings? Is that why
Yeah.
we try to
Mhm.
shove them
Mhm.
down the same funnel?
Mhm. 100%. 100%.
What do we do?
Oh man. I don't know at this point. Honestly.
I think that's a reasonable answer. I
I
really
really
do.
don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out.
Samesies.
I don't know how to navigate it. The best thing that I could do that I can think of right now is continue educating people of the impact of remaining in status quo and the impact of doing what you just laid out there. I don't have sometimes the alternative isn't very crystal clear. It's very, again, to your point, very nuanced, very specific across different audiences, strategies, segments, whatever. I don't know. I want to noodle on that question,
Yeah, for sure.
but I'm trying to figure it out. I know you are too. So
Yeah. It's weird to just kind of boil it down to a simple question on a podcast amongst friends. However, what that question really is how do we fundamentally change the entirety of the way humanity looks at B2B as a whole?
you will not be able to do that.
Right. Right.
You won't. But if you can move the needle by 1%, that is infinitely better. And that's a lot. 1% is a lot.
I would say from where we're sitting, yeah, it has to be, right? I don't know how, unless we just revert back to buying ads in the phone book, I don't know the backwards or that we could go. Like we're still trying to drag everybody kicking and screaming, like I posted on LinkedIn, into just doing something with their brand, just trying to be recognized, doing literally anything that hey, we're not going to be able to track this, but everybody's going to think it's really dope and they're going to talk about it a lot. Like, no, it's not fun. No one
Yep.
does anything fun.
Yep.
And by fun, I mean memorable. Everybody's saying the same thing, so nobody's saying anything.
Break that down a little bit for me, what you mean by that, because to me, memorable doesn't have to be fun. To me, memorable can be very simple. It's hard to define it. Human, like I don't have any good examples right now, but
It,
less of the same is what I'm saying.
Sure. It doesn't necessarily have to be fun to be memorable, right? But it needs to create an emotional response that is memorable.
Yeah.
Think the Dove beauty campaigns,
Mm,
right? There you go. No one would in B2B would remotely consider anything close to that at all, ever.
yeah.
And here I go speaking in absolutes, like, but that's the needle we're trying to move. But like, it is to the point where I'm like, no, mm, can I attribute that?
Like it's thinking,
Mm,
I'm trying to think of a Dove campaign. I can't remember anything apart from maybe something in the late 90s, but
I want to say
the
that
the
was it.
camp the campaign the most memorable campaigns that are fun for me, and I don't know if you've seen them, are the Carl's Jr. campaigns where this girl just it's like there's no music and guys and
Yes.
girls are just chomping into a hamburger and the crunch and the drip. That to me is
Yeah.
super emotional. But then again,
Yeah.
I love
Fair enough.
food. So I don't know. That like it's the only campaign I can remember. Can't And maybe the FedEx Super Bowl one where the caveman kicked the little dinosaur and then
Dollar Shave Club,
okay.
like that viral video that
Yeah.
oh boy shot in his warehouse for $3 and turned it into 2 billion. Like
Yeah.
just those memorable experiences,
But
or there's
yeah.
a component of virality to that as well. But the common denominator is that every single one of those companies are B2C companies.
Yes. And the common denominator is that they've done deep focus groups and deep research on their audiences at scale, because B2C is obviously, there are a lot of consumers, right? There are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of B2B buyers. It's harder to tap into the B2B buyer to understand emotion. Start now. It doesn't take a lot of money, it doesn't take a lot of time. You don't have to do it relentlessly every week, you could do it once a month. But understand who you're trying to get to understand who you're trying to capture from an emotional standpoint, so that you could tie in the fun, the boring, that resonates and extracts emotion and, in essence, virality.
And on that note, folks, that's a wrap. That was extremely, extremely well said. I think there's so much to unpack. There's so much to take away, and I want to know how many people are going to start this video over and just listen again, because
I
you're
will.
dropping bombs here. Like it's awesome.
I will. I
It,
kind of
absolutely awesome.
I forgot what I said, but
Same.
I
Yeah, for me
appreciated
too.
this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, everyone out there, I'm listening and watching. All of Danny's information will be in the description below. Danny, thank you so much for being here. This is Demand Gen Therapy. Hope you had fun.
I had a great time. Thanks for having me.